Merci et bonjour tout le monde. Merci pour votre présence aujourd'hui. I thought this would be a nice opportunity to do my presentation in English today. So like Jordi said, my name is August Eubanks. I'm a third-year PhD student in public health with funding from the French Agency for Research on AIDS and Viral Hepatitis, ANRS. And I'm going to present to you two analyses from my thesis. So, key populations are at the greatest risk of new HIV infections, and in some contexts are a potential bridge for transmission to the general population through their partners. This is notably the case for men who have sex with men in West Africa, where HIV prevalence in recent years has been consistently high, while remaining low in the general population. In addition to biological factors, one of the main explanations for this concentrated epidemic is the hostile legal, social, and cultural context that restricts MSM access to HIV prevention and care. Studies have shown that different MSM profiles exist and are exposed to varying degrees of HIV risk depending on self-perceived risk and sexual practices with men and women. A number of comprehensive sexual health interventions have been put in place in West Africa to reach more MSM and deliver better services, including peer-led counseling, community engagement, and MSM-friendly clinics. These interventions have increased participation and engagement in care while reducing certain high-risk behaviors. But nevertheless, behavioral interventions alone are not sufficient to reduce HIV infection and transmission over the long term. A biomedical prevention tool like PrEP seems like a promising option for this population. PrEP is an antiretroviral treatment to be taken before any HIV exposure. It can be taken daily or intermittently, depending on the user's preference and risk level. Its efficacy has been proven in multiple clinical trials and has been recommended for MSM since 2014. Although PrEP is being introduced progressively throughout sub-Saharan Africa, access remains difficult for MSM, and data on MSM sexual behaviors, including PrEP uptake and adherence, are scarce, and this slows the development of evidence-based public health strategies. The impact of PrEP uptake on MSM sexual behavior and the feasibility in this context is unknown. The region's socially and culturally hostile context for MSM may create barriers to adherence and retention, and this could put MSM who practice risk compensation behaviors at greater risk of HIV infection. We argue that the introduction of PrEP in West African countries could reach MSM who are less involved in community associations, including marginalized MSM and MSM at high risk of HIV exposure. Beginning in June 2015, the COMSM program offered a community-based MSM-tailored prevention package. Its objective was to demonstrate the feasibility of enrolling and retaining MSM in a program in West Africa, using a convenient sample of participants attending community health centers. The principal results show that participants are eligible for PrEP because of their risky sexual behavior and the high HIV incidence that was found in this population. Furthermore, PrEP seems feasible in this context because of the high adherence to quarterly follow-up, and participants declared interest for it. Accordingly, in November 2017, COMSM was ended and a new cohort, which included PrEP, was created, called COMSM PrEP. This prospective cohort study has recruited HIV-negative MSM in 4 community-based clinics in Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and Togo. Men aged 18 years or older reporting at least one episode of anal sex with another man within the 6 months prior to enrollment and providing written consent are eligible to participate. In addition, they have to meet at least one of the following 5 criteria: have a seropositive sexual partner who is not virally suppressed, unprotected sex with multiple partners in the previous 6 months, an STI in the previous 6 months, post-exposure prophylaxis use in the previous 6 months, or wanting to reinforce their prevention methods with PrEP. COMSM PrEP enrolled participants from the COMSM cohort who met the eligibility criteria and wished to continue follow-up, as well as new participants who are identified by peer educators through a specific network of community-based organizations, including MSM who are already attending the clinics or the prevention activities, peer educator networks like friends or sexual partners, and outreach via local LGBT organizations. Quarterly follow-up includes free clinical exams, PrEP delivery, so event-driven or daily PrEP, HIV testing, screening and treatment for other STIs, distribution of condoms and lubricants, and prevention counseling. The latter is provided by peer leaders and focuses on encouraging testing, risk reduction strategies, PrEP adherence, stopping PrEP or changing regimen types, and program retention. Quarterly questionnaires are administered face-to-face by trained research assistants, and they collect data on individual characteristics, sexual behavior, psychosocial aspects, substance use, and PrEP and condom use. Clinical data was also collected by medical staff at each follow-up visit. So the general objective of my thesis is to study the impact of PrEP on the sexual behavior and psychosocial perception of COMIS and PrEP participants. To do this, I identified 4 specific objectives. The first was to determine whether the introduction of PrEP as an additional prevention tool influenced the type of participants signing up for COMIS and PrEP. The second was to describe sexual behavior, PrEP adherence, and combined prevention strategies in COMIS and PrEP, and determine whether these factors changed over time. The third was to estimate the attrition rate in COMIS and PrEP and identify the factors associated with loss to follow-up. And finally, to understand the onset of an HIV seroconversion despite the offer of PrEP. So the first analysis I will present was recently published in the Journal of AIDS and was presented at AfriVie 2020, titled Reaching a Different Population of MSM in West Africa with the Integration of PrEP into a Comprehensive Prevention Package. So this is a cross-sectional analysis at baseline. The outcome COMIS and PrEP participant type was constructed according to the recruitment strategies used, so either direct recruitment from COMIS-M cohort or the recruitment of new participants from the community. Potential covariates considered in the present analysis included sociodemographic and socioeconomic characteristics like age, country, education level, self-perceived financial situation, the MSM identity, so sexual attraction, being a member of an LGBT or HIV/AIDS association, and being out to at least one family member. Sexual behaviors like the number of sexual partners, having partners of unknown HIV serostatus, having female partners, condom use, risk reduction technique score, and the number of sexual intercourses. And finally, we looked at psychosocial factors like self-esteem, being a victim of blackmail, feeling alone, and a victim of intimate partner violence. First, descriptive statistics were performed to compare the 2 types of participants using standard statistical tests. Inverse propensity score weighting helped correct for sampling bias based on 3 main individual characteristics: age, country, and education level. And these weights were specified when estimating univariate and multivariate models. A logistic regression model was then used to identify factors associated with being a new participant. All covariates with a p-value of 0.25 or less in the univariate analysis were eligible for the multivariate model. And the final model was then selected using the AIC, using a backward stepwise algorithm. So 524 participants had complete baseline data and were included in the present analysis. The mean age was 26 years old. Most participants were from Mali, followed by Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and Togo. The proportion of new participants was 41%, while 59% had participated in COMIS-M. 49% declared having multiple sexual partners in the previous 3 months. 51% had male and female partners, and 15% reported condomless receptive anal sex during their most recent sexual encounter. Multivariable analysis showed that new participants are more financially unstable and feel more alone. They are less likely to report membership of an LGBT or an HIV/AIDS association and to declare being out to at least one family member. Furthermore, new participants were 1.85 times more likely to report having a female partner of unknown HIV serostatus, and around 2 times more likely to report being a victim of intimate partner violence. They were also less likely to report consistent condom use with primary male partners. And finally, reporting sexual intercourse with a primary female partner in the previous month was negatively associated with being a new participant. So, our study showed that 41% of participants in the co-MSM PrEP cohort were new participants, and that even after reducing the sampling bias, their profile differed from the remaining 59% in terms of socioeconomic characteristics, psychosocial factors, and sexual behaviors. They had a more vulnerable and marginalized profile, marked by financial instability, a high risk of HIV exposure, social isolation, including isolation within the MSM community, which could all be potential drivers of loss to follow-up and barriers to PrEP adherence. Because of the recruitment strategies used, the study population might not be representative of the overall local MSM population. However, the differences found in this analysis suggest that the addition of PrEP to the existing services appealed to MSM who were less connected to the community health centers and local LGBT associations. Despite this selection bias, we found different profiles within the study population. This indicates that a truly representative study would reveal even more heterogeneity, reinforcing the need to offer tailored programs to various MSM subpopulations. Social desirability bias may have influenced participants' responses to the survey, leading to underreporting of both high-risk sexual behaviors and other sensitive topics. Nevertheless, this bias was minimized by the fact that trained research assistants, some of which belong to the MSM community, were involved and administered the questionnaires. And then finally, because of the cross-sectional nature of this analysis, we only captured behavior at baseline, so our results can't be used to analyze behavior over time. So in conclusion, the introduction of PrEP as an additional prevention tool and the use of peer-based outreach services over time influenced the type of participant signing up for an existing community-based HIV prevention cohort in West Africa. Adding these two prevention elements to existing interventions in sub-Saharan Africa could be the key to reaching MSM subpopulations marginalized from HIV prevention and care, as a part of an overall mission to sustainably reduce the risk of HIV infection for this key population. So, the second analysis I'll be presenting will soon be submitted to the Journal of International AIDS Society and was presented as a poster at AIDS 2020 titled Evolution of Sexual Behavior and PrEP Adherence in a Community-Based Cohort of Men Who Have Sex with Men in West Africa. The present analysis is a longitudinal analysis from baseline to M24 and included participants enrolled between November 2017 and April 2020, with at least one available questionnaire. As the study focused on the impact of PrEP on sexual behavior, adherence, and combined prevention use, participants who were seroconverted during follow-up were censored at their seroconversion date. For each quarterly visit, sexual behavior, PrEP adherence, and combined prevention strategies with male partners only were assessed using the following 7 indicators. First was the mean number of male sexual partners, the number of sexual intercourses with main and casual male partners, condomless anal sex, condomless receptive anal sex, self-reported PrEP adherence, and the combined prevention strategy, so PrEP and condom use. The covariates used were time since study entry and PrEP regimen, so event-driven, daily, or no PrEP. Descriptive statistics were performed to measure changes in outcomes between baseline and M24 using standard statistical tests. The generalized estimating equation method was then used to investigate potential changes in outcomes over time and potential regimen-specific changes in outcomes over time. So for each outcomes, 3 GE models were estimated by progressively adding the following covariates. Time in the cohort to test the overall outcome evolution over follow-up, the PrEP regimen to study whether the outcome differed between regimens, and the interaction between time and PrEP regimen to test whether the outcome evolution over time differed according to the PrEP regimen. All the models were adjusted for the following confounders: age, country, education level, and recruitment type. And the best fit model was chosen using the QEC. So the GE model estimates showed that the risk of an increase in the number of male partners in the previous 3 months lowered by 13% each year, irrespective of PrEP regimen. Overall, no change in CAS or CRAS during the most recent intercourse was observed. However, the probability of reporting CAS increased by 45% per year, but only for daily PrEP use. No evolution in the number of intercourses with a main male partner was found. Daily users were 33% more likely to have had 1 to 4 intercourses with a main male partner. The probability of 1 to 4 intercourses with a casual male partner decreased by 25% per year, while the probability of 5 or more decreased by 32% with respect to no intercourse in the previous month. Correct adherence was 3.4 times more likely in daily users than in event-driven users. In addition, poor PrEP use was on average 54% less likely in daily users. The probability of reporting poor adherence and suboptimal adherence during the most recent intercourse decreased by 37% and 49% per year, respectively, with respect to no PrEP use. The GE model showed no significant change over time for the probability of combined PrEP and condom use, of condom use only, or of PrEP use only, with respect to no PrEP or no condom use. Using only condoms was 62% less likely in daily users than in event-driven users. The results of this article show effective levels of PrEP adherence and no evidence of risk compensation after PrEP initiation in MSM enrolled in the co-MSM PrEP cohort in West Africa. In fact, a decreasing tendency was observed in some high-risk sexual practices. The levels of self-reported correct PrEP use over the study period were similar to those found in other studies, including our findings of better adherence to daily PrEP compared to event-driven PrEP. And these difficulties with adherence were reflected in the profile of seroconverted participants, with 15 out of the 17 having been on event-driven PrEP. In terms of sexual behaviors, we observed a decrease in the number of male partners and intercourses with casual partners, but no change in the number of intercourses with a main male partner. It is important to note that CAS increased, but only for daily use in our study. However, given the levels of other sexual behavior indicators decreasing or remaining stable, as well as the high level of adherence, the overall risk of HIV contamination was low and therefore, in our opinion, does not suggest risk compensation. Daily PrEP was moderately more preferred to event PrEP for individuals having sex with a main partner. Having a main partner or a monogamy agreement are often associated with condomless anal sex among young MSM. And since daily users declared more sex with main partners, this could be one explanation for the increase in CAS. Despite PrEP being offered free of charge and as a part of a comprehensive sexual health prevention package, unprotected sex, or neither PrEP or condoms, increased from 7% at baseline to 10% at M24, and no PrEP use increased from 25% to 33%. And though this wasn't significant in multivariate analysis, these results are still concerning. In other PrEP studies in relatively less difficult contexts, PrEP persistence, or the sustained use of PrEP over time, has been a problem, especially among minorities and other marginalized communities. So we can therefore suppose that this problem will be even bigger in West Africa as PrEP is scaled up. So studying these vulnerable participants and adapting the co-MSM PrEP program to their needs will be essential as follow-up continues. In conclusion, globally, PrEP adherence appeared to be optimal. However, the event-driven PrEP regimen needs to be explained in greater detail to participants as they struggle to take it as prescribed. No evidence of risk compensation was found. Nevertheless, at M24, 33% of participants declared no PrEP use, and 10% did not use condoms or PrEP during their most recent intercourse. Studying these participants and adapting the program to better accompany them will be essential for PrEP success in West Africa. So now that we've shown that PrEP can potentially be used to reach MSM subpopulations marginalized from HIV prevention and care programs, and that PrEP can be effective for MSM in the West African context, it's time to tackle the two other objectives. For the third objective, we estimated the time to loss to follow-up and tested for significance between different covariates using the Kaplan-Meier technique and the log rank test. Then a Cox proportional hazards regression model was used to determine the predictors of loss to follow-up. These results are preliminary and will be updated for a poster presentation for the HIV Research for Prevention Conference in January. Then for the fourth objective, I performed 15 semi-directive interviews with seroconverted participants by Zoom to try and understand their point of view on the sexual health package, their perception and use of PrEP, and the circumstances surrounding their HIV infection. I'm currently waiting for the transcriptions and plan to analyze the interviews thematically using in vivo. So stay tuned for these results in a future seminar. So I would like to thank the MSM participants and the staff of the community-based organizations who participated in the study. Thanks to ANRS for my funding, all the partners near and far, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Merci.